Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, it's time!
3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game!
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Float game for the win! Ayler's gone. Come on, touchdown, Indy! Woo! America! They got a football team now!
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company Studios. And as you can see, we are joined by Todd Leary from myjumpshot.com. How are you, sir? How was your week been?
It's been long, but sun's shining, and it's going to be pretty warm today. So starting to get a little bit of that spring vibe.
I like it too, man. This is the last day of February. That means tomorrow is March.
Insane.
I
Our
cannot
favorite
believe
month
it.
of the year. I know. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of a fuller month. It comes in as March, but it's like, yeah, not quite there yet. Just chill out.
Nope.
You got a couple more weeks, and then you'll get a nice day, and then it'll go back. I mean, these temperatures are like a roller coaster right now, but that's okay. I'm ready to bust out. I'm sick and tired of being cold.
You and me both. Like I'll take these little days of sunshine and driving with the windows down. It's a good feeling.
It absolutely is, but the one thing that it means is we're reaching the end of the college basketball season, and that is never something that's fun. It's like taking a drug away from somebody, man. After we've had a great college football season, unbelievable, and then college basketball is what it is. It may not have been great, but it's always great because it's a great sport that we enjoy watching. But man, it's about to come to the end. We're about 3 games left in the regular season, and things are still tight, Todd. Michigan and Michigan State in the Big Ten. It looked like last night that Michigan was going to stub their toe, and hand Michigan State a 1-game lead in the league race. But they turned the tables. Earlier in the week, we saw Michigan State win a game with a 3-quarter court shot that went down. And then last night, it was Michigan's turn to hit the last-second shot to win the game against Rutgers. Rutgers, man, had them on the ropes all night.
No, Rutgers dominated that game, for the most part, defensively. And I think the bugaboo for Michigan, turnovers has been I think part of one of their biggest issues throughout the season. And that early in the game last night, they allowed Rutgers to hang around, and Rutgers gained momentum, and they're, obviously they're uber talented. And they just, they did everything but win that game. That's a heartbreaker for them. They're not on the bubble. They're not even remotely close to. They're going to have to make a major run in the Big Ten tournament to have a chance. I mean, but that team is so talented. I'm not calling anybody out. It's just it's strange that team's not better than they are. They have 2 top 3 picks. This is the whole John Calipari, issue with Kentucky. In a little different way, but kind of the same. And that you get super talented guys that are just young, and I'm just going to say quite don't understand how to play yet. Like they're really good. I'm not taking anything away from that. I hope that doesn't come across that way, but veteran, older guys just figure out a way to win. And that Rutgers team has struggled. And you're right. The top of the Big Ten, Michigan State, I thought I did not think they were going to have a chance to win the Big Ten with their schedule. The way it was supposed to end up. Had they lost that game to Maryland, I don't think they would have had a chance to win. But the opposite is, I mean, they made a more than half court shot, and that has propelled them into the driver's seat. So now it's theirs to lose.
And they played a lot better than I thought that they were, because I
Totally agree.
They were not as good as we thought that they were the luxury of an early or softer front loaded schedule, or not front loaded back. And then I saw who they were going to have to end the season with, and I'm like, oh, they're screwed. But
Right.
not so fast, my friend. They're
Well,
hanging
and
in there
they still
tight.
kind of are. And honestly, like 4 days ago, if you'd have asked me who I actually had to bet on to win the Big Ten, I would have said Wisconsin. Like I think Wisconsin, with their schedule and
They were
the
surging.
way that they were playing, I think that they were sitting in the driver's seat to win the Big Ten, because I thought
Until-
Michigan and Michigan State were going to have that chance to, they were going to play really tough teams and just probably play well, but not be able to win some of those games. And I thought Wisconsin was in the driver's seat, but then they laid an egg and lost a game they should not have lost.
And that amazingly happens, even to the best teams. I mean, Wisconsin was playing as well, if not better, than anybody in the league at that moment. But it sneaks up on you. That's why Indiana has to be very, very careful on this West Coast road trip. First of all, they go out to a Washington team who is bringing up the cellar in the Big Ten at 4-13. But you can't sleep on anybody. They've got 4 wins. They beat four teams, and I think one of them was an upset. Pretty good. I can't remember who that was, but they're always dangerous. But you have to take care of business, and then you have to go to Oregon. But first up is Washington, and that's who they have to pay attention to.
Yeah, and the schedule sets up good. Like that's the air quote easier of the 2 games out there in the Washington game. So you get to go out there and hopefully get a win under your belt. Then you're going to sit for a day or two and then have to play another game. And if you're playing with house money, if you've won that first game, like if Indiana finishes the year and they lose that Oregon game, but they win against Washington and Ohio State, outside of losing in the first round of the Big Ten tournament, I think that they're probably have a decent chance at making the tournament. But the first and foremost thing that has to happen, I don't think that is the case if they lose to Washington. That quality of a loss would be detrimental to their hopes. I do think they can lose to Oregon and still get in. But like I said, if you're playing with house money, you just take a different approach. If you get the job done and handle your business, all the cliche terms against Washington, you go into that Oregon game kind of free rolling. You're playing with house money, and so at that point, I think they just have to go win that Washington game. That game is pivotal in how the end of this season plays out for them.
Absolutely, and I was trying to figure out who they had beaten, the best team, but Maryland is who they beat. So that was back in early January. So things are a little different now, but it was at home, and so you've got to be wary of them. They can jump up and get you at any time, but this is an opportunity to get a road win. It's not going to be a quad one, but gives you confidence, lets you keep rolling, because they're playing in a very short rotation right now, Todd, and it's working though, because they're going with the one big out of not by choice but by necessity, with Malik being unavailable the other day. I'm not sure what his status will be coming up, but being forced to go into that situation, it's working. It just allows for better spacing. It was more of a team win the other day with so many of those guys contributing, but then they had to. There was only 6 of them that were really a part of what was going on.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I really do hate to be this way, and I don't like it when other analysts and people do it. But I mean, it is kind of the I told you so kind of situation. Like, this is what the way that Indiana played, and the reason why Mike Woodson is retiring or it's being replaced, however you want to look at it, is because they tried to force play. In my opinion, it's because they tried to force play in the 2 bigs. And that was the worry last summer when they signed Ballo. Yeah, you were excited about it because he's super talented, but you also, like, that's not the style of play I think Indiana was going to play at its best. And that's not the style that I enjoy watching the most. I like seeing them get up and down the court. I like seeing them shoot threes. And, that's the style of college basketball in 2025. And that's a more sustainable, successful style of basketball. And so, yeah, they've kind of been forced into playing it like, I hate to even go as far as to say, it's killing Mike Woodson to have to play this lineup, but I do feel like it's a bit reluctant. I almost felt like he threw the lineup out there a couple games ago and was like, all right, everybody, you want me to play with a small lineup? Here you go. And they didn't even, it was the first half of the Purdue game and they didn't even start out that well. But to his credit, and maybe because he was going to let them get buried, he stuck with that lineup. And the second half of the Purdue game, this team has taken off. And I would be surprised if behind closed doors, Mike Woodson didn't show a little bit of surprise as to how well this style of play is working. And I don't think it fits with how he likes to coach and how he likes to play.
I agree with you. I think that he's just, I don't know that he credits it that. I think he thinks it's probably something else. Who knows? But it's almost
luck.
Yes. Yeah. It just happened to work out that way. But it's almost like these guys are able to finally find their role in what they're supposed to do. Whether, Trey Galloway and Anthony Leal are great players on this team, probably would not be great players at some other places from a talent standpoint. I don't mean that as a knock, because they're getting done what they're getting done with their hard work by finding a role, a niche. Trey Galloway is an assist machine. I mean, dude comes up with 8-9 assists in these games. That's not easy to do in a Division I basketball game.
Well, it's not. And I'll tell you, like, there's something to this, and it's kind of hard to explain. It would probably need like a 2-hour conversation instead of 10 minutes here. But, when guys are playing and the game's just flowing, like I'm going to use the end of the game the other day when Trey Galloway makes 2 big threes. Okay. Well, we all know Trey Galloway is a capable shooter, but he's not, no one's going to identify him at this point in his career as a knockdown standstill shooter. Okay. But my theory in all of it is when the game is flowing, so when they're flying up and down the court and they're playing fast, you don't have time to think. And I think Trey caught those balls at the end of the game. His confidence was high. He had already made a couple shots, but you don't have time to think. You catch that ball on the break and you immediately fire it. And those were going down for Trey. He looks more comfortable that way. I think Goody looks more comfortable that way. I think Mgbako looks more comfortable that way. But when you run a set in your offense, which you have to do, you have to be able to do this. But when you run a set and the ball gets moved around and you're stationary and you're set and the ball's coming to you and you know you're getting it and the shot clock's running down and you have to shoot it, you think about it a little bit more. And I think most players do. And I think Trey Galloway is probably the best example I can use right now. But I think if you just analyze the way the whole team looked, the way they were playing at the end of the last game, I think you get a little better sense is that they're more comfortable in playing in that role. They're not good at running the shot clock down, to 7 and then having to create something. And we just don't have that kind of team built. And very few coaches or programs have that kind of team built. Most teams play a little bit better when it's a little helter-skelter.
Yeah, and Indiana that's kind of what they are. They run the pick and roll a lot, but that's kind of, other than that, everything else seems to just be a byproduct of that and how it works out. But I could be wrong. I'm X's and O's on basketball is not my forte.
No, you're right on though. I mean, that's what when you still there?
There we go. That sounds great.
Oh shoot, I lost you.
That's okay.
Now,
No, you're good. Oh, absolutely.
All right. Sorry. I got a call there and it screws up my microphone. But when Trey Galloway's coming off that high ball screen, whether it's Renew or Ballo, that's when the offense is flowing well. That's when the offense is, that's when it's looked its best. I don't think that's the best offense. I mean, you get Ballo, out there 30 feet from the basket. Is that the ideal place for him? But it's just hard for his defender to have to cover that. And you're right. That's where Indiana's half-court offense has been more successful. I just don't think it's successful enough to say this is what we're going to run and we're going to be good enough at it to beat you and try to stop it, because teams have stopped it. And so when it organically happens throughout the game and that's where the offense ends up flowing to, I think they're much better off. When they come down the floor and try to set those plays up, it's not near as fluid and isn't as effective. So I just think they're better off when they're playing fast, getting up and down the court, making plays and making the game a little more helter-skelter. I mean, that's what Auburn wants to do. Auburn wants to make the game crazy and out of control. And Alabama, like, they all want to get the game going fast. And because that's when they play their best and they think they're better than you playing fast. And I think Indiana is better playing fast than they are playing slow.
Yeah, that's I think of that. I think of Trey Galloway. I mean, that's what it reminds me of, just diving in there and hoping something happens, and if not, finding somebody to throw it to. But hey, whatever works. And when you're pulling out the amount of assists he's pulled out, it's really amazing his assist numbers. A lot of times they're sneaky. But he's constantly getting the ball inside, getting the ball to Ballo or whatever the case may be. And 9 assists in a game he's not just done that once. He's done that several times.
Right.
And that's a high number.
Well, it is. And I'm going to say this, it's going to sound like I'm kind of picking on him. And I own myjumpshot.com. So obviously I watch more of jump shots than, maybe some of the post play that goes on, but he's doing that. You think about 9 assists in a game for him. He's doing that. I don't mean this to be mean, but he's doing that without a floor full of guys that can spray it and knock shots down and make shots all over the court. And there are several teams where, Braden Smith is a beneficiary of having several guys that can knock down shots. And I think the team is molding into that a little bit better. I think Goody is somebody you can spray it to. Carlisle hit a big 3 the other night. So yeah, there's guys that have picked up the slack and done a little bit better. But yeah, this is not a team where you would think assists would be something that's all that talked about, because they're just not that good at shooting from the outside and scoring from the outside.
And talk about timely play. Carlisle the other night hasn't brought a lot to the team. Let's be honest. It's why he's gone from the starter to the bench. He only scored 5 points the other night, but those 5 points came in succession. One was a reverse layup that I think that stopped a 10-0 run, I believe at the time. And then he hit the 3. So he gets 5 points in a row that stems this 10-point run that Penn State had gone on. So it was very timely. So Indiana got everything they needed to get from the few guys that rolled out there the other night. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different guys in double figures, pretty equally spread out. Anthony Leal with just 6, but he did a lot of work on the defensive end, and he has been playing hard defensively. That's what you're going to get with this team. But one of the things that was amazing to me, Todd, on 29 made field goals, they had 24 assists. That's a stupid high number.
It's a stupid high percentage. I think both of those numbers need to be higher. Or I think they need to play faster and get more shots up and make more field goals. I mean, that's where I kind of stand with that. They're not a good enough shooting free throw team to rely on that. So, I just sometimes that assist ratio can seem a little bit weird and produce something that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yeah. But I mean, one of the things that does tell you, Indiana is not a team. I don't think they would be described as a team of a bunch of guys that can go create their own shot. And that's kind of a buzz term that's been used over the years to describe players that are maybe, not elite enough to be able to get around guys or fast enough or whatever the reason might be. Indiana's not built, and most college teams are not built with a bunch of guys who can create their own shot. And so Indiana does rely on assists and being able to move the ball and that kind of stuff. And so, I really feel like, I didn't judge how Carlisle played the other day. And I feel exactly the same way you do. I think he has really struggled in the last 2 months of transitioning into Big Ten play. And I thought the other night it wasn't his 5 points that was the most important part of what he did. I thought getting involved in the game, he made some good rotations. I thought defensively he's always disruptive, and that's a great thing to be able to say. But his 5 points were a bonus. It was awesome. That obviously they needed it at the time. They were 5 huge points. But I thought he contributed outside of just those 5 points, and that's what they need more out of him. Had he not scored the 5 points, I think I would have still told you he played really well. But for the most part, you couldn't have said it better. Those 5 points were timely, and doesn't look huge on the stat sheet 4 days later, but it was big at the time.
Yeah, and it sticks out in my mind because I remember I'm like, I said they sure needed those buckets there.
Yeah, that corner three that he made was gigantic. Yeah. It was in the shot clock. It was a big deal.
Absolutely. And you mentioned creating their own shots. The only guys that I've really been able that I've seen that they can do that is Mackenzie Mgbako and Miles Rice. Miles can get to the basket, and Mgbako, he's kind of in great when he can get out there and have some space, but that goes back to not having the two bigs in there, having spacing, having the room, having the room to move around. And when he does that, like the other night, he did that quite a few times. And so that's when you can see that happen. So it everything has to do with each other. It's a chain reaction kind of a thing from this offense.
It is. And I'll tell you, you didn't really ask me this question, but I'll tell you to
just
finish out
I did.
I just pretend. Yeah, it was a great question, Jim. The way I appreciate you bringing that up. But I mean, I really think the focus of these last few games and then the Big Ten tournament and hopefully the NCAA tournament, if I was on that coaching staff, I would be racking my brain every second of the day to try to figure out what we have to do to get Mackenzie Mgbako involved in the game. I don't need him to score 20 points. I would love it. He's very capable, obviously. But I need him to be involved in the game. When he's involved in the game, when he drives the ball to the basket and gets fouled early, gets a ball to go in, makes his free throws. For some reason, could make his free throws the other day. But when he gets involved in the game, Indiana's better. And he is – this statement's going to come across, I'm sure, pretty stupid. But I'm telling you, he is one of the most talented players that has ever played at Indiana University. When you talk about a 6'9" guy with his type of jump shot stroke and ability, his length and ability to rebound and everything that he is capable of doing, he's one of the best players that's ever played there. And I think this team's ceiling, they don't get anywhere near their ceiling without Mackenzie Mgbako, I think, probably being the best player on the floor. And in my opinion, I think it was tried to force all year long and really the last couple of years, it's been forced to try to make the big guys the focal point of everything. And I really feel like if they kind of turn it around and make him Mackenzie Mgbako the go-to guy, like the guy that they focus everything around. It might not work. He might not get involved. He might get in foul trouble early. Like, you got to be able to pivot. But if it were me in these last 3 games and then the Big Ten tournament, I would put the onus on Mackenzie Mgbako, and I would rearrange our focus to try to get him the guy that gets going early in games.
Yeah, and when you say one of the best ever, you're talking about his talent, his pure raw talent.
Sure, 100%. His physical abilities, he is one of the best players that's ever graced an Indiana uniform.
My question would be about his motor. Does he have the motor to go along with that yet? And sometimes you have to learn that motor.
For sure.
You have to learn to get that motor revved up. I'm not sure that he's there yet. Defensively, he definitely has to turn it up a little bit. Still learning. It looks like it. He looks like one of those guys that he's so good. His talent is so raw and so natural that he's never had to work as hard. So he doesn't maybe yet understand how hard he has to work.
Doesn't know how to. Yeah, and for sure. And like going off to college, big time college, especially you get a Tom Izzo or a Bob Knight or Gene Cady or somebody, a legendary coach, or once you go off to the NBA, like they have coaches that are very trained and adept at getting the most out of players and tapping into their potential. And I'm going to use a ton of buzzwords and cliche statements here, but I mean, like, Mackenzie Mgbako is an untapped resource right now. Like we've seen what he can do from time to time, but we don't get it consistently. And, everybody thinks they work hard. I thought in high school I worked hard. I think that everybody thinks that they work hard. You learn once you get to college, like you learn how to work hard. Like you think you're working hard, and you probably are, but not to the level of what it takes it in, big time Division I basketball. And then off to the NBA is even another gigantic step. So people teach you how to work and how to work hard. And I think Mackenzie's slipped through the cracks all the way back to, youth basketball, I'm sure, in not really having someone with their thumb on him saying, you got to be working harder. You got to be doing this. You got to be working on those things. He's so talented. You're right. It does come easy to him. And he's got that Jay Edwards kind of almost looks like he's aloof a little bit, like not playing hard. But anyone that ever played against Jay Edwards will tell you that's not true. And I think Mackenzie Mgbako needs to get to that point where when people play against him, they fear him because they know at any point in time he can go crazy.
Yeah, he can put the fear of people in offensively, but defensively, he also has to learn how to shut people, or not shut them down per se, but make himself
just not be a liability. He's so good
himself
offensively. All he's got to do is not be a liability. All you got to do is be in the right spot. Like Fletcher Lawyer, I seem to always reference Purdue on here because I watch most of their games too, but I watch almost all Big Ten games. But, Fletcher Lawyer is not a guy I think they're ever going to talk about as, a defensive asset. He gets the job done and he's in position. But he's so good offensively, and he makes their offense flow, not just when he's making shots, but he makes their offense flow or helps it flow. And so, that's kind of what Mackenzie Mgbako needs to be. He doesn't need to be a stopper on defense. He just can't be a liability.
Now, do you think the money has affected any of these guys?
It has to. Like human nature, it just has to. And I don't mean affects them to where they don't care as much. I think it affects them to the point where hurting a little bit. Maybe I'm contradicting myself by saying those two different sentences right there. But I mean, yeah, I think the money has changed things. Like you were always Mackenzie Mgbako right now, Malik Renew right now would be doing everything in their power to get to the NBA. Because that's where the money's at. You don't make any money prior to that. And, they would be busting their butt to get to the NBA. If they don't ever play an NBA game, they should still leave college as millionaires. And if you can honestly tell me that doesn't affect human nature, I would probably have a long debate with you, and I might lose that debate at the end. But I can just tell you, it has to make a difference, I think, in just not in an individual game or not in whether you want to take the last shot or in things like that. I just think the overall fight and what you need to try to accomplish as an individual for some of those guys, like Mackenzie Mgbako is a great example. He's not going to play in the NBA unless he ups his game. And I think he would be upping his game a lot more if he didn't have a fat bank account.
Yeah, I agree with that. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday. Todd Leary with us. He'll be right back here in just a second. But while we're waiting on Todd to rejoin us, Mike Woodson met with the media after Indiana's most recent win over Penn State. See what we can pick this up here. Or maybe not.
Fortunately, if it is your last time against Purdue as well, what does it mean to you and how gratifying is it to go out on a game like this?
Well, it's always special when you beat Purdue. We had battles when I played here for Coach Knight, and Purdue ended my career in college in the Sweet 16. So, I've had a history and a lot of experience in dealing with Purdue over the years. And the games are always tough. Regardless of how much talent each team has, or who has the most talent, those two particular games are always pretty tough. And I thought we battled the first half, and they were the better team the first half, but the second half was our half.
Coach right here.
There was Mike Woodson talking after the Purdue win, actually. I thought that was after the Penn State win. But how about Indiana's ability this year to kind of raise their game for the Purdue game, not only at home, but on the road? You know as much as well as anybody how tough it is to play in that place. But they probably should have won that game in addition to the one that they won in Bloomington. Now you're muted somehow. Let's see if I got you muted or there you go.
There you go. Now I'm unmuted. Yeah, I mean, every team every year can probably kind of say some of those. There's a couple games they probably should have won, and maybe a couple games they probably shouldn't have won. That one that was up at Purdue probably played out just about like you would have scripted it out. Like it was a tough battle. That press conference and that answer at that press conference is probably the thing I've agreed with the most with Mike Woodson and his entire tenure at Indiana. Those Purdue games are just different. And North Carolina Duke games are just like those rivalry games are just different. And they are you never really know the talent level unless one team is just so much more ridiculously talented than the other. There's been a few lopsided games in that series, but there's not very many. And they generally go down to a battle. And you generally don't look at the score afterwards, and it gives a good depiction of the way the game went. Like Indiana winning fairly easily in the second half of that game with Purdue. We know they were down by 12 at halftime, and that honestly could have been 18. And had it been 18, they might not have been able to make that kind of run. But, who knows? They did. And so, I couldn't agree with him more in saying those games are just different. When you play at Indiana, I'm assuming when you play at Purdue, years later down the road, there are games that stick out to you. We had my very first loss in college. I came at Ohio State. Like I remember that game pretty well. I remember playing at Kansas. It was the only time we ever played in Allen Fieldhouse. Like there's certain games that stick out to you. Most of the Purdue games you remember. So most of the games in that series fall into the category of ones that when you're 54 years old later in your life and you're sitting back telling somebody at a bar how great you were, those are the games you kind of reference a little more. And he's right. Like those games just play out different. And that was a gigantic win for Indiana. Like the only reason they're being talked about right now is because they beat a team that is of that caliber. And I know, Purdue's on a little bit of a slide right now. We all think they'll be back. I think they'll be back and fine, but that's the best team Indiana's beat this year. And I think had they been able to beat Maryland, you could have made a little bit of an argument there as to which one of those teams is the better win. But, that was their best win and their signature win at this point in their season.
Yeah, they have an opportunity to get another big win, not immediately, but Oregon is on the horizon after they take on Washington. And Oregon has been an up and down team, man. They started out pretty hot. They were ranked in the top 12 at one point, I think, but they've kind of slid back to reality. And but it's an opportunity to get a win because that will not be an easy place to play.
Yeah, and you know what? This is an easy out and kind of a cop out for an analyst to say, but Oregon is one of those teams that they can literally beat anyone in the country. Like they can. Maybe you separate out Auburn. I'm not sure they could beat Auburn, but they are talented enough and capable enough. They could beat just about anybody in the country. They can also lose just about anybody in the country. And, them losing to, a Northwestern and things like that, that's not shocking. Like they're not a team that is night in and night out. You know what you're going to get. And I think Dana Altman, the coach, probably wants to pull his hair out sometimes because some days they look like one of the best teams in the country, and some days they don't look like they belong in a Power 5 conference. So they're just a team that's kind of you can lump a lot of teams I think into that, but they're one of those teams that you could get them on any given night, but they could also beat anybody.
Any way that anybody besides Michigan State wins the conference this year? This late?
I think Wisconsin has a chance at winning. Look at the schedules of Michigan and Michigan State. Now, they can't both lose out because they play each other the last game of the year. But whichever team wins that last game, like let's say Michigan beats Michigan State in that final game, if they lose their next two games, I do think Wisconsin has a chance. And their next two games are not easy. So, Michigan honestly should have, if you watched that game last night, they should have lost that game last night. They didn't. So, credit to them. But I think Wisconsin has a chance going into the, I'm going to say, like, you didn't ask me this, but let's just pretend again that you did. Great question, Jim. Which Big Ten team has the best chance at making a run in March Madness? My answers are going to be Wisconsin and Illinois. Like, I still think those two teams, and then the next one I think is Purdue, and then the next one is Michigan. And I don't put Michigan State in that category at all. And it pains me to say that because I don't respect anyone in college basketball probably more than Tom Izzo. And I don't mean this like it sounds like I'm really trying to pick on Michigan State. They just can't score. They are not a team that can consistently score the basketball. Therefore, it's so hard for me to think. I do think anybody in the country can beat them. Now, I'll tell you this. I think their defense is a top 5 defense in the country. And that's why they are as hard to beat as they are. And that's why they're going to win games 60-50. But, I don't put them in the category. I think they could lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They could lose in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. They could also win the whole thing, Big Ten tournament-wise. I don't think they're capable of winning the NCAA tournament. They just can't score.
Michigan has won a ton of close games, which that's great. I mean, that's something that you're happy with. But on the other hand, you're like, okay, why are we having so many close games?
Yep.
And they've had a lot of them. I mean, a lot. As their last 8 wins, probably 7 of them have been in like 5 points or less.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And I'll just say this. Yes, as a coach, you, as a program, you love that. Like, you love the fact you're able to make the plays at the end of games to win. Like, you are very, very proud of that. On the other hand, you're like, okay, that was great. Let's not do it anymore. Like, let's not get to the point where we have to win those games because, right now you lose, they lost the game to Michigan State. And then they turn around and they, without making a 30-foot shot at the buzzer as time expires, they lose the game last night to Rutgers. Like, you're not always going to make that play. Like, that shot that the kid made at the end of I forget his name, but the kid that made at the end of the game last night for Michigan, that's a 10 to 15% likelihood of making that shot if you're wide open just shooting in the gym all day by yourself. So they're not going to be able to rely on that.
He was like 30,
it was 30 feet. Yeah, it was deep. And so, but I mean, like, you can't rely on that. And once it gets to the Big Ten tournament and then the NCAA tournament, like they had that game with Michigan State. They didn't pull it off at the end. They didn't make the plays. But their season continued. They're getting at the point now where it's only going to take one of those games and their season's over if they don't pull it out. And so, as a coach, you're proud of your guys for making the plays. You also want to spend the first 38 minutes putting yourself in a better position so you don't have to do that.
Indiana, we talked about them playing a little bit better here of late, mainly because of how the rotations have changed. And do they have a chance to do some work in the Big Ten tournament? They're going to play a first round game. They'll be the higher seed, so they should win that game. Then that's going to set them up with a second round game, but that's going to be a tougher game, but probably a winnable game.
Well, look at who's going to be. I mean, look at who you're going to have to play. You can play this game from both sides of the argument. But Indiana's second round game is probably going to be against like an Illinois or Purdue or Michigan or somebody like that. And you look at that as, oh man, is it a great opportunity for Indiana to get another signature quality win? You beat a team like that, you probably are in the NCAA tournament. So you can look at it from that perspective, a great opportunity, or you can look at it as, oh man, that's a really tough game to have to play that early in the tournament. But then flip that around, Jim. Think about if you're one of those other teams. And Indiana, who is, Indiana and Rutgers are the two most talented teams not in the top 5 of the Big Ten, in my opinion. Like, they They have a lot of talent. They have a lot of capabilities. And, Rutgers, because they've got the two amazing freshmen, and those guys can go off on any given night, and they literally can beat anybody. Those two guys go off for 30, and you're going to have a tough time beating them. Indiana doesn't have those guys, but Indiana has a talented roster. And we all said this going into the season. Indiana had a top 3 talent level roster for the Big Ten. And that hasn't changed. I mean, there hasn't been a ton of injuries that have taken guys out. There's been illnesses and some minor injuries. Every team deals with that, but no one really wants to play Indiana, especially now that they're kind of free rolling, that they're playing, the coaches, they made the announcement about the coach. They know he's not coming back. Everybody's I never had that scenario, so I don't really know what's in their mindset, but I can tell you, it changes things a little bit. And it's if you don't adapt the us versus the world mentality at that point, you're never going to adapt that mentality. Because right now in that locker room, it has to be us against the world. And I think it is. And I think that's a difficult team to play against if it's used in the right way.
I know you probably don't have the direct answer to this question, but the defense has just jumped up 2 levels. 3 levels, maybe. Where the hell has that been? Where did that come from? Because that has been such a huge difference for this team. It's been amazing to watch.
Well, Jim, I fall into this category, so I'm going to lump myself into what I think most fans do. And last summer, when Ballo signed, right when Indiana was able to land Ballo, and we knew that lineup was going to be very difficult for Mike Woodson to not play Malik Renew and Ballo together on the floor. Once that happened, I think most of us, and I'm sure on your show, and I said this right off the bat, week 1, was how offensively it was going to slow them down and how offensively they were going to play a style I was hoping they were not going to play, and all of that. But if you dig into it a little bit deeper, that lineup with those 2 big guys on the floor is difficult defensively. It's difficult to manage it because you're generally not guarding. There's not 2 not fast, athletic guys on most other teams you're playing. And I'm not trying to be derogatory to Renew and Ballo, but I mean, they're not light of foot and they're not going to blow by anybody or blow by very many people. And so I'm speaking offensively. Again, I catch myself doing it every time. Whenever we refer to the big lineup, I think our minds go to offense. But defense, it's different also. You know why they look a little bigger? You know why they look a little faster right now and are flying all over the place, contesting shots a little better? Because there's only one of those big guys in there. And they got 4 guys that are a little bit more agile out there flying around. And, I'll tell you this. Coach Knight's big thing on defense was always our help defense. I became a really good defender because I was always in the right position. I can't guard anybody one-on-one. But with my team, I'm a pretty solid piece to that team defense. And when you're looking at this team rotation-wise has not been that great when you get 2 big guys on the floor. We always used to, I'll say, adjust our defense if, whenever it was a bigger guy that you were involved with a switch or with a screen that's coming or whatever it is. As a guard, you always have to know who the other guy is. If it's one of the big guys setting the screen, you handle it different. And I don't think we talked enough throughout the season about how Indiana's defense probably struggled a little bit as much as anything because of that lineup and because of the 2 bigs in the lineup. And I don't know if he would agree with it or not, but I see a difference in the defense, and I see them playing faster and a little more helter-skelter on defense, which is always a good thing because you want to create chaos defensively.
Chaos and helter-skelter.
Chaos. I'm all
Todd Leary, the shot doctor from myjumpshot.com. If you've got a little bit, I don't know if you can stick another segment or not. If you've got a roll, I understand, but
I do have to roll.
All right, you roll on, brother.
Right.
Enjoy your weekend. We appreciate you as always. It's just some fun conversation. Enjoy it. Appreciate you as always. Go out and have yourself a great weekend.
Appreciate it. You too. Thanks.
You betcha. Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.